Well, firstly, we need to have an alternative to primary education wherever such areas exist, where there are no good schools, no good teachers. There's no point in saying, let's go and build a school there and let's hire good teachers. In Tora Bora, Afghanistan, there are no primary schools right now. The answer is not to pour in £1 billion and build a wonderful primary school. How long will it last? So we need an alternative there. But when you look at educational technology, there's a funny problem. What is educational technology? It's what we have here, video cameras, laptops, projectors, PowerPoint. Was any of this created for primary education? You'll notice none of it was. This projector up here is an expensive piece of equipment. It was invented and sold to the corporate market for making corporate presentations. The laptop was made for corporate executives and therefore is priced accordingly. Microsoft didn't write PowerPoint for school teachers. They wrote it for corporate executives to make boardroom presentations. So the teachers are borrowing this expensive technology and putting it into schools. So which school will it go to first? The richest, the most affluent schools, because it's such expensive technology. Now, those schools already have the best teachers and the best students. So educational technology has always been thought to be overhyped and underperforming. But then if you're testing it with the best of your children, naturally you're going to say it's not worth the money because they were doing well in any case. So I thought we should test out that last sentence, that educational technology should be designed for and reach the underprivileged first. That maybe at the bottom of the pyramid is where its real effects can be felt. So that was my first sentence. The second one is this: where good schools can't exist, we need an alternative to schooling. So what can that alternative be? And since when did we need it? If you look at the history of schooling, there's an interesting thought there, a thought experiment which actually Nicholas Negroponte taught me, which is, imagine to yourself that you are able to go back in a time machine about 100 years ago. So you are at 1908. And you bring back a surgeon into a modern operating theatre. The surgeon will not recognize anything at all, if you think about it, not a thing, except of course the human body, which he will recognize, but nothing else. Everything has changed. But now you repeat the experiment. This time we go back 100 years and we bring back a primary school teacher into a primary school classroom. And she'll pick up the chalk and do exactly what she was doing 100 years ago. Nothing's changed since Plato's time in education. The structure of education. Yes, we have a projector maybe instead of the blackboard. That also not everywhere. But we have a built-in belief that education has to be done that way. A classroom full of children, a teacher, and a method, which is the curriculum, the textbook, the exercises, and so on. Is there an alternative at all? So I spent the last 10 years looking for this. It's basically what I did were a series of experiments. I'll just show you a few of them. The first one was in New Delhi in 1999. In an area called Kalkaji. I used to work in Delhi at that time for a company, for a private sector education company called NIIT. And NIIT was an education company and a software development company. Very rich, very posh, beautiful office, all glass and aluminum and everything, with a boundary wall separating it from a large, sprawling urban slum, which is quite common in many of the developing big cities. So just outside the office is this slum. So now on this side of the wall, of that boundary wall, you have all the hep guys, the sales guys with their ties and the software developers with their laptops and all of that. The other side of the wall, you have a whole lot of children doing not particularly anything. So what I did was I made an opening in the wall, cut a hole inside it, and I put a glass pane against it, put a PC running high-speed internet. In those days, it was running altavista.com. That was the opening screen. Put that against the wall and buried a touchpad next to that. So now, from the dirty side of the wall, what you see is a glowing blue rectangle about 3 feet off the ground. And I just left it there to see what would happen. A colleague of mine was positioned about 20 feet away with a video camera. And this is what he got after about 8 hours. That's NIIT. That's the experiment which, for obvious reasons, got called the hole in the wall. On the right is this 8-year-old boy. He's the son of the local tobacco seller. His father sells cigarettes outside. To his left is a student, 6-year-old girl. And what he was doing was quite interesting. He was teaching her to browse. Now, that was very non-intuitive at that time, and it raised a lot of questions. Firstly, was this real? Secondly, does the language matter? Because they've never seen a computer. They're not supposed to know any English. They presumably barely go to school. The third question was from my boss. Will the computer last? How long before it gets stolen and broken? And the last one was the most interesting. Did anyone teach them? How did they know all this? And everybody said it's very simple. You've got all these young software guys on the other side of the wall, so these children must have just called somebody and said, show us what to do, and somebody showed them. So I wanted to check whether that is what is true. So I repeated the experiment again, this time in the middle of India, in a little city called Shivpuri, where I was told that no one had taught anybody anything for a very long time. So there was no danger of someone teaching computers there. So I buried the computer into the wall of in Shivpuri, and I was in a car on the other side of the road with a zoom lens, and I wanted to catch the first instance of when anything happened. Warm day. And in the middle of the afternoon, a school dropout, a 13-year-old boy, came over there. And he started fooling around with the touchpad. Noticed very quickly that his finger movements on the touchpad was moving something on the screen. That happened in 4 minutes. When that happened, it caught his attention, and he went closer. And as he was fooling around with his finger on the touchpad, he hit the touchpad, and that was an accidental click, and the Internet Explorer changed page. Now that happened about, I think, 6 minutes down the line. When that happened, he looked from his hand to the screen, made the connection, went right up against the computer. 8 minutes later, he was browsing. Wasn't doing anything terribly technological, but he could go from one website to another and come back. And he knew that the pointer will change to a hand shape and you have to click it. Having found this, he then started calling all the other children in the locality. And by the end of the day, 70 children were browsing. Okay, so this experiment showed that it's possible for these children to jump across almost 5,000 years of history in 8 minutes.